The 805 Focus is brought to you in part by NonProfitKinect. NonProfitKinect provides superior leadership tools and resources so nonprofit leaders and board members can make valuable decisions to move their organization forward to a sustainable and vibrant future. More information on services online at nonprofitkinect.org.
Welcome to 805 Focus. I'm Dr. Cynder Sinclair with NonProfitKinect, and we will be bringing you the latest on your favorite nonprofits. So get ready to be inspired. Our special guest today is Cosio, and Kira is with CASA of Santa Barbara County. Welcome, Kira.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh gosh, you know, you folks are doing such important work in our community. And so I'm eager to hear all about what's going on these days.
Yeah, a lot of people don't actually know a lot about CASA, so I'm excited to share.
Okay.
And you know, there is reason that people don't know too much about what we do, and it's because people don't really like to talk about child abuse.
Well, true.
Understandable. But the reality is it is happening in our community to about 500 to 600 kids a year. Mm. So what we do at CASA, court-appointed special advocates, is we make sure that those children in the foster care system have a volunteer. Someone who is there just for them, so one volunteer assigned to one child as they navigate through that court system. Mm. All of the children, they range in ages from 0 all the way through 21. Mm. They've all experienced some type of abuse or neglect. In Santa Barbara County, a lot of the cases that we see are neglect because of drug abuse. The parents, the drugs take over, and the kids get put on the back burner. And that's how a lot of the children end up in foster care in our community.
So let me ask you this. So then, let's say that it's a situation of neglect. Mm-hmm. Then a teacher or a neighbor or somebody finds out, and then the child, and then the authorities are alerted, and then depending on the situation, the child is removed, right, and then goes into foster care. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it is. And foster care doesn't just mean foster homes. Oh. They can live with a relative, or, for example, a relative would be a grandparent, aunt, uncle. It might be a foster home, or in rare cases, a group home if there's no foster placements available. And I have such a respect for our foster parents in this community because that is a hard job to do. So I'm really grateful for them. And our CASA volunteers, common misconception, are not foster parents.
Okay.
It gets a little confusing because CASA does mean house. But our volunteers are just an extra set of eyes and ears for the court. And they're there because they're just one person assigned to one child. Sometimes a sibling group, so sometimes there's 2 or 3 kids. But these kids, they've got their social worker, they've got a lawyer, they've got the judge, they've got their teachers, their coaches, they've got all of these responsible adults in their life. But all of those adults are paying attention to so many other kids. They've got so many other balls moving. Social workers, for example, 25 families at a time of cases that they're managing.
Wow.
It's hard to give one child the individual attention that they need.
Sure.
But our CASA volunteers are able to do that because they're assigned to just one child's case. And there's a lot that they're able to catch on to.
Yeah.
So
is there a certain amount of time? How long typically does a CASA, a volunteer, stay with a particular child?
On average, it's 18 months. Oh. So they're on the case until it closes. So if that child is in foster care for 7 years, it's our hope and expectation that the volunteer would be on that case for that full 7 years. That is rare, though. I think our longest case in Santa Barbara County with a CASA volunteer is close to 12 years.
Okay.
But that's a special situation where the child had some developmental disabilities, some behavior issues, and it was really hard to get them into an adoptive home. and the volunteer was able to stick through it. I actually got to see that child in particular kind of towards the end. We do these events at CASA where volunteers can bring their kids to just a fun outing.
Yeah.
Like an Easter party. We did a Valentine's Day just scavenger hunt, like walk around a park, find these things, get a goodie bag. And of course we do a big Christmas party. So these are opportunities for our volunteers to take their kids out, have a fun day for free in the community. But this one child, I've been with CASA for 5 years, and her and her volunteer always go to these events. And I got to see her kind of, as a preteen, the scraggly hair, just so cute. And the last time I saw her was at our Christmas party, and she was a full-blown teenager.
Gosh.
And it was just, I barely recognized her because, I don't see the kids that we serve too often.
Sure.
They work primarily with their volunteers, but it was really awesome to see the connection that they had built. And this child has grown up in the foster care system, but her CASA volunteer was there the whole time.
Oh, gosh.
So it makes a big difference.
I can
are
see
able to see things that other people might not catch.
Yeah. Boy, that's a blessing for that child to have that one friend that they can count on.
Exactly. And that's kind of the story that we hear over and over again, is that these kids are able to call upon their CASA volunteer, whether something's going wrong, something's going right. And now I have to get into my stories.
I can hardly wait to hear your stories.
So one of our volunteers was on a case with a teen boy, and this teen boy was one of those who unfortunately was bouncing between group homes because there just weren't enough foster placements that were willing to take a teenage boy. It can be really hard. So he moved, I think, to somewhere in LA, and that's where he was, and his CASA volunteers still made that drive every month to go see him. Our volunteers, usually it's once a week, but we understand, obviously, if there's a drive that has to be made, but this volunteer made the commitment once a month to go see his CASA child in person.
Gosh.
So they were planning the next month's visit, and he said, so normally I come and see you the second week of the month, but that's your birthday. Are you sure you want me to come? I'm sure you're gonna have a big party and everything. And the kid said, you know what, I want you to come. I'm going to invite you to my party because I know at least you will show up. So it's like,
how sweet.
I know. He wanted to make sure his CASA volunteer was on the invite list because he knew no matter what, that volunteer was going to show up for him.
That is precious.
Yeah, and it's just things like that that really make a difference. Someone that this kid can call on, like I said, in the good or bad times. Yeah,
sometimes we take this sort of thing for granted in our daily life, but these kids, they don't have that, so that's wonderful.
Yeah, and even we've had kids who have made a bad decision, as kids do, and they called their CASA volunteer and said, I want you to come with me to the police station so that I can admit to doing this bad thing, and I need you to hold my hand through that because that's how I'm going to make it through, is basically what they were saying. So it's someone they can trust. Another story, we've had kids be adopted, obviously, which is great. So they go back home or they become adopted. About half of the kids we serve do go back home with their parents. They're able to get it together and safely provide a home for these kids. And on the rare occasion, there's another case of abuse that happens in the same home. It's about 3% of our kids every year, which is way too high, but it does happen. And we've had kids call their CASA volunteer as they're being removed from the home and say, we need you back. The child is having to call them. But it's the first call that they make, and it's just building that rapport between the volunteer and the child is so vital so that the children are able to share these things with their volunteer.
That is such important work that you're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not always great to, like I said, our volunteers visit the child weekly, and sometimes kids don't understand that our volunteers are volunteers, which makes sense. They're used to their social worker checking in, they're used to all these people, And it's really easy to shut down and not let people in.
Oh, sure.
Very understandable. So one of our volunteers was being persistent, setting these appointments up with the teenagers. They were texting, and the teenager just kept canceling on them. And so finally the volunteer said, you know, if you are going to cancel, that's okay, but let me know because I'm getting off work early to come see you. And the child said, oh, this isn't your job? You have to call off work to come see me?
Oh, gosh.
And so, I mean, it's just having someone who's there
Yeah.
that wants to spend time with you. They're not being paid to do it.
Yes,
They're
yes,
doing
yes.
it out of the kindness of their heart. That goes a long way, too.
So, Kira, let's say somebody's watching this interview and they think, gosh, you know, I want to find out more about what it takes to be a CASA volunteer.
Yeah.
Can they go on your website and find out about that and find out about training that you have? And
Yeah, we have a ton of information on our website, really easy to find. It's sbcasa.org. We have a whole page on volunteering that gives you all the ins and outs. It is more of a professional volunteer role, and it's more of a long-term volunteer role because our expectation is that this volunteer will be with our program at least a year, hopefully until that case closes, but in a year they can definitely make a difference. So it's more than just a show up, paint a house kind of day. Or, I mean, that's really important, but our volunteers are in it for the long haul. And the training is all encompassing. They get to know about the court. They get to meet the judge of the juvenile court, which is really valuable to be able to ask him questions. We have a panel of advocates that they get to do a little Q&A with. We go through how to write a court report. Our volunteers write a report to the court, so it goes to the judge, the child's social worker, and the attorneys, all about the child. They put in a picture, description, who's in that child's life. They interview people, and they get to advocate through that report on what's best for that child, in their opinion, as a community member. And it does sound a little scary when you say court report, right? But it's only every 6 months that this child has a court date. The judge doesn't expect it to be in any fancy jargon. He's asking just for a community member's opinion. And
well, that sounds doable for sure.
Yeah, and the great part is too, you're not in it alone. So we have a whole staff of a support system.
Okay, a lot of support.
Yeah, so you have a person at CASA, that's your advocate supervisor, that guides you through who you should talk to, who you should interview. When your court report is due, they help you edit it. They sit in court. So we have a staff person in court taking notes, because I've been there and it moves quickly. And there's a lot of numbers that get thrown out and it can be confusing. But I always think, what does the child feel like in court? You know, we had one child who felt like she was being sentenced to 6 more months in foster care. Because that was what happened at the court case, but it was because her mom was still having to work to get back as a family unit. But that child in that courtroom saw the judge. She heard that there was going to be 6 more months, and she thought she was being sentenced.
Oh, bless her heart.
Yeah.
So all this great work that you're doing, you must welcome financial donations. So I would imagine on your website, once again, someone can hit the Donate Now button and make a tax-deductible donation.
Absolutely, and they're always appreciated. I'll just highlight kind of 2 ways that people can donate. One really easy way is to join our Circle of Hope, our monthly giving program. So easy, quick, sign up, pick how much you want to donate a month, and then it's automatic. So set it and forget it.
That sounds easy, and I love the name, Circle of Hope, because that's what you're giving to these children. That's what the CASA volunteers are giving, is hope.
Exactly, and hope can go a long way. I know I'm probably going to get the quote wrong, but when you think about it, in a room full of darkness, if you just light one candle, the amount of light that spreads through that room just from that one candle, that can make a big difference. So holding on to that spark of hope when a child's navigating through something so scary and chaotic, being that tiny, tiny bit of light can really make a big difference.
Gosh, that's a great analogy.
Turned into an analogy rather than a quote because I was afraid it was going to be wrong. But the other kind of big donor level that we have is a full year of advocacy is $2,500. So when you enter CASA as a $2,500 level donor, you get to be part of our Sponsor a Child program. So that's on me, where I get to pick out a case in our county that's happening right now that has a volunteer, and I share updates with you in real time of what's going on in that case. What does the volunteer and the child like to do? What's the goal of the case? Are the parents working to get that child back? What does that child want for Christmas? And then you have the opportunity to fulfill that wish yourself.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a good way to learn about our program and also support it at the same time.
And that's really, well, see if my math is right, a little over $200 a month, right?
Yeah, 208 to be exact.
208.
And we can set that up to be an automatic monthly donation as well. So you could join the Circle of Hope and be a Sponsor a Child donor at the same time.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet there are going to be a lot of people that are going to want to do that.
I really hope so. And the best way to really stay up to date on what we're doing in the community as far as what's the need, how many volunteers, if we're having any events, is really to follow us on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So CASA of Santa Barbara County on Facebook is going to be where you can find everything that we're up to. And I bet there's going to be a picture of you and me on there.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's wow, you do some powerful work there.
Yeah, and you know what? The best way to really spread the message, because like I said, not a lot of people like to talk about child abuse in our community, but if you can tell a story to your friend, I shared a few stories today, but if you had something that resonated with you and you want to share that, that's how we get more people involved. Like I said, there's about 500 to 600 kids each year in our foster system in Santa Barbara County. And last year we had about 282 volunteers.
Oh, wow.
So you can see that we need more.
You need a lot more.
Yes. So if you know someone or you think you are that someone, I encourage you to reach out. And what I'll say as well is there's more than 900 programs across the nation that do the same thing, that are CASA programs. Each county has its own program. So if you have a friend in Minnesota that you think would be a good CASA, send them to their local CASA program because they can do it in that community.
That's a really good word.
Yeah, and so the message that you share can spread and you can help a child, and that at the end of the day, that's what it's about, is making sure that these kids have someone that they find their safe home with a loving family.
Oh, so now, Kira, we have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Is there another message you'd like our viewers to know about CASA of Santa Barbara County?
I would just love to share some stories. So I am a recent parent myself. I have an 8-month-old at home.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And there is so much that you have to keep track of and worry about. The amount of things that I Googled is out of control. And it still is. It's slowed down. But when you think about that child, and about a third of the kids that we serve are babies, that child moving to a different home, to a different community, how many things can slip through the cracks? Yeah. I mean, even now we're eating solids and it's like, has he had peanuts? Like, is he allergic? There's so many things that can happen. And so our volunteers help make sure that those things are caught. We had one child who was a baby and they weren't hearing very well. Like a fire truck would go by and they wouldn't really react, an airplane, and this volunteer kept bugging their social worker, we need to get this child in to see a specialist. And then they would move foster homes, different social worker. But the volunteer kept on it, they were that squeaky wheel, and they finally got this child in to see a specialist, and they had blockages in both ears. And as soon as those were removed, the child was babbling better.
Oh, man.
They were hitting those milestones. And so just having that consistency is so important, especially early on. And I'm so grateful that that volunteer was there.
That's a great story.
It's one of my favorites, just because it illustrates the difference that one consistent person can make. And they were only seeing the child once a week.
Gosh. Kara, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful information and the stories and the invitation for someone to be a CASA volunteer. And thank you for all the good work that you're doing and for being on our show.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for shining a light on CASA and what we do, because you make a difference by doing that.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for joining us on 805 Focus, and we'll see you next time.